Hi guys, it's Megan again, and I'm really excited to see you. Today we're going to start our first lesson for the month of November. We are almost to the end of the year. Can you believe it? Today we're going to learn about how we can obey God's commands. And before we get started with our Bible story today, we're actually going to play a fun, quick game called Points of Connection. So for this game, I'm going to call out a number, and you have to make with your body those points of connections on the ground. So for example, if I say 2, well that's easy. You have 2 feet that can make points of connection. Or if I said 2, you could try to balance on your 2 hands. Or maybe put 1 hand and 1 foot on the ground. Or maybe if I said 3, you could put 2 hands and 1 foot on the ground. Or 1 foot and 2 hands on the ground. Do you get it? Good, let's get started. Are you ready? 1. Can you make 3 points of connection? How about 4 points of connection? Let's try 2 points of connection. You guys are really good at this. Let's make it a little bit harder. Can you try to make 5 points of connection on the ground? Wow, that was really good. Okay, so now that you guys are really good at it and you understand the game, we're gonna make it even harder. You're gonna find a partner, maybe your mom or your dad, your brother, your sister, a grandma. If you don't have anybody in the room with you, that's okay. You could use the back of a chair or maybe the arm of a couch. And what you guys are gonna do is grab your partner's hand or the back of the chair and don't let go for the rest of the game. Are you ready? You're gonna make 1 point of connection while holding your partner's hand. Yeah? How about 3 points of connection? What about 5 points of connection with the ground? Can you make 5 points of connection with the ground while you're holding your partner's hand or the back of the chair? Get creative. I bet it's kind of hard. Okay, you can let go of your partner now, and you can stand back up or sit back down. We're done with the game. Was it easier or harder to obey the commands of the game when you were holding your partner's hand? Why? I think it's safe to say that we all like to do things our own way, right? And we might even get a little bit angry or upset when someone tells us how we have to do something. And let's be honest, we all have a lot of people in our lives who tell us what we have to do. Teachers, parents, grown-ups, right? So why do we have to obey God's commands too? Well, it's because when we obey God's commands, great things can happen, you guys. So settle in and get comfortable because we're about ready to learn a story about a man who had to learn the importance of obeying God and what can happen if we don't. Today's story comes to us from 1 Samuel 15, verses 1 through 22. And it's about our friend King Saul. And we've talked about Saul before, remember? King Saul was the one who wanted to kill his son Jonathan's best friend, David. And well, this story takes place before all of that started. This is about a time when Saul disobeyed God. Now, through the prophet Samuel, God ordered Saul and his armies to completely destroy the Amalekites. Not just the people though, the livestock too. No, wait a minute. We serve and worship a God of love, right? Why would God ask them to do that? Well, in a lot of the Old Testament battles, God used human armies to fulfill divine punishments against adultery and other blasphemous acts that were just as bad. And in this particular case, God was punishing the Amalekites, who, if you remember, we talked about them too. They were the ones who attacked the Israelites and Moses as they were coming out of Egypt. And they brutally attacked and targeted those who were straggling behind. Remember, the weak, the injured, the elderly, those with small children. So God directed Saul to annihilate them on his behalf. And this battle was meant to send a message. And Saul, he did it. He followed God's commands. I mean, mostly. He did destroy the Amalekites, most of them. Saul disobeyed by capturing the Amalekite king alive and taking the best of the Amalekite livestock to keep for himself. This act of disobedience shows us a consistent flaw of Saul's actions as God's anointed servant. his half-hearted obedience to God's very clear instructions, right? Why do you guys think that Saul chose to disobey? Well, he claimed to have saved the animals so that he could worship God by sacrificing them. His quick response caught him in a quick lie. Has that ever happened to one of you guys before? Have you ever thought you were going to get in trouble, so to deflect that anger, you told a really quick response that wasn't quite true, and then you were stuck in a lie, right? Which only got you in more trouble. I think we've all been there. Well, for Saul, in early scriptures, we're told he and his army kept what appealed to them, and they only destroyed what they deemed as worthless. And worshiping God wasn't at the forefront of their minds, like it should have been. Or we could also speculate that Saul was maybe motivated by insecurities, right? Prophet Samuel pointed out in the scriptures that Saul seemed to think little of himself. Or maybe it was peer pressure. Have you guys ever had peer pressure yet? In scripture, Saul passed blame and said he was afraid of the people and what they were demanding. And really, any and all of these excuses seem like they could have been true. But the bottom line is, Samuel made it very clear. God doesn't want some big show of worship in exchange for obedience, right? God doesn't want us to worship him in public and then go home and not listen to what he's telling us to do, right? Obedience is better than sacrifice. And in the end, Saul's lack of obedience cost him his crown. It cost him his title of king. Has your disobedience ever cost you anything? It's something to think about, right? God calls us to obey him wholeheartedly, no matter what, friends. So invite God to be your Lord today, to be the king of your heart, to be your boss, and honor him with the highest form of worship, complete obedience. I do have a really fun challenge for you guys today. I want you guys to write, practice, and act out a skit for your family about obedience. And we do have a new memory verse for the month of November that comes to us from Romans 13, verse 1. And it says, "Everyone must submit to governing authority, for all authority comes from God." One more time, are you guys ready? Romans 13:1. Everyone must submit to governing authorities, for all authority comes from God. Have a great rest of your week, and I will see you on Saturday. Bye.